One of the great benefits of automation is process measurement. Having a real-time sense of item status, deadlines, values can help leaders and teams make decisions about running work items. In this class, we will learn how to create these dashboards and how to publish these dashboards to your users. The first thing I need to do to set a dashboard is to set a theme for that dashboard. Imagine, for example, that I have accounts payable and accounts receivable themes, and I want to display real-time information from these two processes to a set of themes. So I already have the theme for this dashboard. And those dashboards are pages where you can define access based on the user's role. First thing you need to do here to set up a dashboard is to create a new page. In our case, our theme will be the process of purchase itself. I will call this new page Purchases in Progress. On this new blank page, we will add the widget the same way we added the records widget in the records class, and we will learn different graphic widgets. The first one we are looking to look at is Recent Items. The Recent Items widget displays a list of recently opened work items. This is really good if you want your purchasing team to be able to act quickly and see what the latest items are. This widget can also be used in the publication part of the process documentation, in case you want to show the latest processes that have been recently modified, or if you want to see the processes that have been published recently. To configure, you need to hover the mouse cursor over the widget and this pencil icon will appear. In our case, we want to publish recently opened work items. So here, you will click on New Tasks. You need to filter the processes that will be part of this view. In our case, it is just the process of purchase. You can also configure the viewing profile of the items that will be displayed. If you want the logged in user to only see recent items they are responsible for, you can select this option for the logged in user. If you want it to list the work items of this logged in user or the other groups they are part of, you can select this option. There are also a number of other options. In our case, I want to create a dashboard for the whole purchasing team, so the logged in user can see all works items under all responsibilities in this process. You also have the option to put a few other filters. Filters related to the deadline, or, if you want, to display only the elements that have not yet been viewed by the user, you can check this option. In our case, we will display all items regardless of the deadline, whether they have been read or not. I confirm the creation of this widget. Now, I have a preview of the widget here. To take your user directly to the work item, all they have to do is click on one of the items. It is a way for you to provide quick access to your user who acts in this process. Each time we create a new page in Airflow, it is available here in the menu. Let's go back to our dashboard. If you see your page this way, you are in viewing mode. Let's now enter in edit mode. The next widget we are going to add is the Meta widget. The Meta widget gives you the ability to display performance counters. Additionally, it allows you to drill down into that data to see what elements are impacting that widget. And it also gives you the option to have direct access to the specific work item related to that meta. The first thing you need to select is the data source you are going to use. You can use work items, and when you select work items, you must indicate their situations. You can specify process-specific tasks, and you can also use this widget for the process post part. In our case, now I want to create a newly created work item meta. I will select this element, then we must select the process or processes concerned. In our case, we only select the purchase process. It's still important to have a data filter here. It is not very interesting for you to display all the data of all the history of your production. I want to display work items created in the last 30 days here. You must indicate in the same way as you have indicated there in the recent items what is the viewing range of the user who is logged in. In our case, I want it to see all work items of all responsibilities. If you want something else, then you can filter on that item. Regarding the deadlines, I will select all. I'm going to call this method recently requested purchases. Let's see how it goes. It already displays the meta for you. Something is also very interesting when you click on the meta. It displays a list very similar to the list you see in the task list. And then your user can configure the column layout. He can remove fields, add fields, he can configure it in the way that suits him best. And each time he enters this view, he will see each meta in the layout he left it in. If he occasionally wants to see a work item, he just uses this icon here. Let's create more methods. I want a method that will show completed or recently completed items. Also from the purchase process. The reference date is the last 30 days. Here I can make a comparison between what is concluded and what has been opened. And I want to show here all work items for all other responsibilities. I will now define what it will be called. Recently completed purchases. I will also create another method to show items that are still in progress. For that, I will use this element here. I will select the last 30 days here. I want to show all items for all other responsibilities. I will call it Purchases in Progress. In order for you to be able to change the name of a widget, you need to click on Edit Mode and go to the Appearance tab. I will call this widget Requested Purchases. Since I already have some of the metadata name elements in the title of the widget, I can then change the metadata name to make them a bit shorter and quicker for the user to interpret. I will call the first one recently requested. I will call the second one recently completed. And I'm going to call this one in progress. It's much shorter and much easier to interpret. I will do the same for recent items. I will call it recent requests. Now it is much more suitable. Have you noticed that these widgets take up a lot of screen space? I would like to put these two widgets in the same horizontal row. The column would need to be split in two for me to do this. I need to add a widget called row. The row widget will allow you to split this row into columns. In order for you to add a column, you need to click on this icon here. So, I already have the two columns there. To move the item to one of those columns, I just use this icon here, or I just click on the widget name. When it displays that quadrant in the column, you can drop the item. Do the same with the other widget. Perfect. It was exactly how we wanted it. One of the most common chart widgets is the pie chart. The pie chart is a very traditional chart that displays the distribution of items. This distribution can be quantitative, it can be a sum of value, it can be averages. In short, it can be several things that represent a rank and a value that we call argument and value. In this case, you see a pie chart whose argument is represented by the different requesting departments. To compose the data of this pie chart, it is little different from what we did in the two other widgets. The first thing you need to do is create a data source. Within this data source, you will need to determine what the data source of the query is. You can use records to perform this query. But overall, we use process instances a lot, which are our work items. Right after selecting the data type, you need to select the fields related to this data source. In our case, as it is a process instance, it will show the work item fields we have created in the forms. I want in this case to display the total amount. I also want to have the departments regarding the requester. And then you will notice an interesting thing. I see in the requester field there is an expander here. Why? Since this field is a record type field, it will point to another record. And notice, when I click on the plus, in addition to letting me select the name, email, or whatever, it gives me the option to navigate to another relating record that's within that entity that is the department. This is exactly what we want. We want to get the department name. The third thing you need to do is specify the filter. In the filter, we select the process or processes related to this indicator. We select the situation. In this case, I want to get only open work items, so I will select this option. And you have to set a time limit. In our case, our limit here will be the current year. You can also add other filters. In our case, we only use the filters already filled. Once done, we need to establish a name for this data source. I will call requested purchases. After creating or selecting a query, you must specify the value and the arguments. The value will allow you to use some aggregate functions, for example, count. This will simply count the quantity of items and determine the value based of that quantity. But if you want to sum values, you can also use this strategy. In our case, we are just going to do a count. In the argument part, you must choose which field will be used to highlight the value. In our case, we will make a distribution by department of the request. We want to know the number of work items per department. Once it is done, I have to indicate a click filter. For example, we will choose argument. I will explain why a little later. Once done, the chart is created automatically. I will just modify the name of the graphic. For this, I do the same way as I did the other widgets. I click on the Appearance tab and I will put Requesting Department. I consider this widget to take up a lot of screen space. I'm going to do the same thing I did in the two other widgets. I'm going to create a row with two columns. And now I can place the graphic here. The other widely used chart widget is the bar chart. The bar chart is also a very traditional chart which has the same ID as the pie chart, showing the values of an argument, and that is only displayed on an XY axis. We typically use the bar chart to determine time frames, but you can use it in other ways as well. In our case, we will create a bar chart displaying the requests initiated by date. The configuration of this type of chart follows the same ideas as the bar chart. You just need to indicate what the data source is. For this, you can create a new data source or select an existing one. In our case, I want you to select an existing data source, which is the same query used for our pie chart. It's important because I'm going to show you something very interesting later. Now, I need to determine what value will be used on the argument which will determine the y-axis and the x-axis. Here, I will use the aggregate function count. And on the other side, the x-axis, I have to indicate the field that we will use. In this case, we don't have the field we want, which is the start date of the work item. What are we going to do? We are going to modify the existing data source. And we are going to select this field here. Start date. Once done, this option is available in the argument selection. Then, I choose if I want to display by full date, by month, and by year. It's up to you to choose the most suitable way. In my case, I want the date, and when I say date, it means year, month, and day. I will ask you to select in the click filter the argument option. You will see that something very interesting is going to happen. Once done, I am available to see the bar chart. Here, it shows the quantity of open items by date. Now, look, if you click on an element of the bar chart, it interacts with the pie chart. Why? Because the two graphs share the same data source. If you need to ensure that when you click on certain items, those items act as filter, then you would use this strategy. To do this between elements, you must select the argument option in the click filter and share the same data source. If you create different data source, it won't reflect the other item. Just another detail. It won't reflect the filter on the two higher elements either. Indeed, it has no connection with these two types of widget that we have seen previously. Another widely used widget is the list widget. It simply lists the data from the data source you are configuring. If it uses the same data source as the pie chart and the bar chart, then you can filter this list as well. If you want to have dashboard where people can do filters and then see analytics data, you can use this widget. To configure the list, it's simple. You enter edit mode and indicate which data source should be used. To filter according to other graphic elements, you must select the same data source as the other graphic elements. Then you specify the fields. In this case, I want to have a column that will show the name of the department, another for the total amount, and another for the start date. You will see that this is going to be a bit insufficient for us. To add more columns to this list, just enter Edit mode and modify the data source. We will now add new fields to this data source. In this case, I want to indicate here the subject of the work item, description. I also want to indicate the intended subsidiary. I also want to display the justification field. I also want to indicate the status of the work item. In addition, I want to indicate the name of the requester and display the number of the work item. For this, you must click here and search for the item concerned. Now, you select the name of the responsible person. I also want to indicate here what the current step is. Now I have a lot of information. I will confirm, and from there I can point to the other columns. I want to rearrange this here, so I'm going to remove some columns. I will indicate that in this first column I want to display a work item number. In the second column, the subject. I want to indicate here the requester's department. I also want to indicate the name of the requester. And then a column for start date. One for status, and one for the intended subsidiary. You can choose the different columns you want. We have a lot of information. Now you know a method to create a list that allows you to display all the information you want. Once you click on the work item number, it works as the same as the other indicators. The system will also redirect you to the relevant work item. There are things here that we can already leave pre-configured for the user. For example, I want to sort by number of work items. I want each new work item to appear at the top. I also want to have more suitable column names. So what are we going to do? You are going to edit this widget. Then you will go to the Appearance tab. And then you can change some things. I want to sort by descending number. I can set a maximum height. I will put 500 pixels. So if the widget is higher than 500 pixels, it will create a scroll bar on the right side. To be able to modify the column names, I click on this button to define the columns on the table. Here on the left is the default name, and on the right is the name I want to display. I will then make some changes. I'm going to modify requester department name and call it department. I will modify tracks number and just call it number. I will display here, in the case of the requester name, simply the term requester. And then I'm going to change the name of the intended subsidiary for the term workplace. There, we already have the columns with much more appropriate names. As you can see, Airflow has already changed the name of the columns and placed them within the limits we have determined. You have a lot of very interesting visual resources to publish for your users. Dashboards mainly concern an audience with higher hierarchical positions, coordinators, managers, supervisors. It is important to be able to provide access to these elements for these users. If we go to the Users and Authorization part, here we have a specific role for purchasers, which is the role Purchasers. I need to include this page in the list of pages accessible to this role. But you can also specify this page as the home page for users of this role. To do this, you have to come to this field here, Start Pages, and select this page, Purchases in Progress. What will happen from there? From there, when your user with the purchaser role logs into Airflow, he can have this page, and whenever he needs to access this dashboard, he just has to click simply on this home page icon. So, when it is recommended to use dashboards, the dashboard works as if it were a dashboard monitoring your process or how it is happening right now. It is not very suitable for you to use it as a reporting tool when it is necessary to have a report with long-standing analytic data. The best way is that you create these reports in the editor of reports. Dashboards allow you to monitor your process with recent data, and the goal is to help you make decisions faster and see what is happening in your organization more quickly. On behalf of Venki Technology, I thank you for your attention and I hope you enjoyed the training content. If you have other questions or want to know more, you can access our knowledge base on the website www.airflow.com in the Learning menu and the Help Center section. If you have any business questions, please leave your message on the contact page on the same site. If you are an integrator or implementer and you would like to be a local Airflow partner, please also leave your message on the same contact page. If you are a Airflow customer with the contracted support service, don't hesitate to report your question to us on our chat tool. Goodbye and see you soon.